back, RP fam. Hope you guys are doing well and have had a great week. Happy Thursday. That means it's buy sell day. I am very excited to bring you guys 6 more players, 3 buys and 3 sells. We're gonna try to get players at their peak value, get rid of them and get value. We're gonna try to buy low as always. Now, before we get into that, let's do a quick review of how we did last week. I had T. Higgins, Ramondre Stevenson, both scoring for us. T. Higgy with that monster 89-yard, 2-touchdown game. And then we saw a big boost in value for Jahmyr Gibbs as well. His stock went way up with that David Montgomery injury, even though right now it's not as bad as initially thought. So an awesome week for us, although it's just 1 week, of course. Miles Sanders was a sell for me last week. RB 36 against that New Orleans defense. 17 touches, 47 total yards. So if you sold him after week 1, you made bank. King Henry, 28 touches it took him to get 95 total yards. He was saved with a tutty. I am still on the sell train for him because that offensive line and really team in general in Tennessee is not very good. And then Dameon Pierce was my last sell. 17 total touches, 35 total yards. He is on a downward trajectory that probably no one could have foreseen. Even though I didn't like him coming into the year, I did not expect this. Sell, sell, sell if you still can. With that being said, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. We are almost 3/4 of the way to 1,000 subscribers. Come join us on the journey. We would love to have you along for the ride. To all of my current subscribers out there, love you guys. You are the best. Keep the comments and the positivity coming. Let's continue to move forward together. With that done, let's hop into it. My buys start with last year's, I believe, RB3 overall. He was a league winner, someone we doubted, at least I did, in the preseason. It is Josh Jacobs. He is off to a very rough start. He posted an RB 30 finish in week 1. We thought that was bad. He averaged just 2.5 yards per carry in that game. So can't get any worse until week 2 hits. Jacobs one-upped himself. He had 9 carries for -2 yards against the Bills. So after 2 weeks, Josh Jacobs sits as RB 33.5 point PPR, sandwiched between Tony Jones Jr. and a dude named Chuba Hubbard. So not exactly where we wanted it or expected him to be after a couple weeks. Now I know that the week 3 value here is hard to gauge, but going by my current rankings and acknowledging what we had as far as draft day values are concerned, if I can move somebody like Miles Sanders, who I had as a sell last week, he's RB 31, or Breece Hall, who is RB 29 for him, I am trying to do that. Now, obviously, we know the talent that Jacobs possesses. His owner, whoever has him right now, they do as well. But there is a chance that doubt has crept in. Jacobs currently is averaging 1.6 yards per carry, and he has 0 touchdowns. To be clear, I do not really expect this offensive line for Vegas to get any better, and that is not good news because it has been a train wreck so far, but it was last year too, and the dude still found ways to get it done. You are not going to be able to get him coming off of 2 worse games than this all season long. So I am buying Jacobs now because of that workhorse role, and he also has a defined use in the passing game, which is even more important. Even in last week's blowout against the Bills, when he had 9 carries for -2 yards, may I remind you, he found work and production, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 51 yards. That is the value that we are looking for. Now, we know that Jacoby Myers missed week 2, and Devontae Adams is in concussion protocol as of this recording. Darren Waller is also in New York. So that means that the looks should continue to come for Jacobs one way or another. And the best part about buying him right now is that in about a month, you get to make the decision on what you want to do next. So whether at that point you are a long-term believer or you're just interested in being a short-term benefactor, both options are going to be available to you. It all comes down to his strength of schedule. This week, Pittsburgh comes to town, and no one has allowed more points per game to backs than the Steelers. So the chances are very good that if you don't get Jacobs now, that window is going to be closed. But wait, there is more. From weeks 4 to week 7, Jacobs gets the Chargers, Packers, and Bears. All of these guys are on the docket. All three are bottom 13 teams giving up points to running backs. And the NFC North squads, being the Packers and the Bears, they are allowing top 6 numbers to the position. So it is a safe assumption to think plenty of production is on the way for Josh Jacobs. By week 8, he is likely right back in that RB1 conversation and probably production as well. And at that time, if you're convinced and want to keep him, then you are set. But if not, go ahead and sell high on him. That will be an option as well. And either way, you are winning. Those are the types of moves that we live for. Jonathan Taylor is my next buy, and I want to highlight him now because although he probably isn't completely forgotten, the closer we get to week 5, the more costly he becomes. We know that is when he is available to come up off of the PUP list. If you are currently not rostering him and want a chance at RB1 production at a discount, then JT is a good bet to make. So how to buy him? Well, it's pretty simple. You just give the owners the facts. The chosen one, aka Jonathan Taylor, averaged only 12.6 fantasy points per game last year when he was healthy. That would have been good for just RB18. He also finished outside of the top 30 at the position, playing in just 11 games, and he's had injury issues now in back-to-back years. A questionable situation in Indy. There is a lot of risk. Whatever you have to do to sell and get past these two facts that you keep to yourself, that is what you do. So today, Jonathan Taylor is healthy. He could pass a physical if needed. That's according to the team. That is factoid number 1 you hold on to. Number 2 is that Taylor had top 8 usage in 2022. He also ranked 8th in expected points per game and 4th in touches per game at 20 per. Now, the only reason he was considered such a monster miss last year was his poor touchdown luck. After his massive year in 2021, where Taylor scored 20 touchdowns, he had just 4 last year. Otherwise, his production was fairly solid. He still rushed for over 800. Now, whoever JT ends up playing for, he is going to be heavily utilized, and he still clearly has the talent and the ability to produce. Now, if he stays in Indy, which I would admit at this point seems pretty unlikely, although I would love to combo him with Anthony Richardson, imagine trying to defend those two in the backfield. Holy Moses, good luck defenses. But if not, and he ends up getting traded, whatever team is making the commitment that Indy is asking, they are going to get their money's worth. So I am not worried about whatever risk we are thinking JT comes with, because the acquiring team will have paid handsomely for him and will utilize him like it. He is well worth, at the very least, going and asking the questions about. We do not know what current managers for him are thinking. If you don't ask the question, you can't roster him. Now, if the owner is steadfast that JT is an RB1 flat out, you pass, you move on. There really is no hope there. But if you're able to sell someone who is a top 25 current back, especially one who is overperforming like Rachaad White, Tyler Algier, Jerome Ford, or James Conner, probably package multiple guys around this level to go get myself Jonathan Taylor. And that is because when he comes back, and should be week 5, I believe he is a must-start top 10 running back option. The final buy I have for you guys finally switches positions. We're moving to wide receiver, and it is Tampa Bay Buck Chris Godwin. He is a screaming buy low right now. He ranks just wide receiver 49 after 2 weeks. More importantly though, Godwin has had and will continue to get consistent volume and production. He's leading the Bucs in routes run. Let's look what he has done so far. Week 1, 5 catches on 6 balls, 51 yards. Week 2, 5 catches on 8 balls, 58 yards. He nearly scored, would have had about a 15-yard touchdown if Baker hadn't missed him, but that's okay. That is good for us as buyers. Godwin has a defined role in this offense. He really has for the last 3 or 4 years. He is a chain mover, and he is the most dependable option in the passing game. I see you, Mike Evans, but you are as boom and bust as it gets. Last week, notwithstanding, Godwin is the Bucs wide receiver I want to roster because of his consistency. This offense in Tampa has been better than expected, so there should be more points to go around this year than we originally thought, and I liked Godwin coming in, so that is even better news. Baker Mayfield, no, we talked about the miss with Godwin, but he actually has looked really solid. He just threw for 317 yards. I think he's top 5 as a passer right now in the NFL. What else changed in Tampa that gives us hope? Well, new offensive coordinator Dave Canales, not sure if we're saying it right, but we're going to go with it. He made things easy for Geno Smith last year in that resurgence. He is doing the same thing right now for Baker Mayfield, giving him easy throws. He's got awesome weapons to work with, Godwin being one of them. So if that can continue to work moving forward, the Bucs should have no problem continuing in their current success. As buyers, we love that monster game from Mike Evans, 6 catches, 171 yards, and a touchdown, because it allows us to get Chris Godwin cheaper. We quickly forget that Godwin was a top 15 wide receiver in points per game last year, and that was while he was still trying to fully recover from that massive knee injury just a couple of years ago. Now he comes in, he's fully healthy, and he brings the 3rd easiest strength of schedule to the forefront as well. He's got a great matchup against Philadelphia this week, who has been absolutely crushed in the secondary. The Eagles have allowed the 5th most points per game to wideouts on the season. They just gave up 350 and 4 passing tutties to Kirko Chains. That is why we have to buy Godwin now, get this awesome and consistent floor piece at a rock bottom price. I would love to flip someone like Drake London coming off of that big week 2 for him straight up. Drake is sitting at wide receiver 51. Maybe you can move someone like Christian Kirk. He's currently wide receiver 42. I would make that move as well. I think Kirk is going to be far less consistent. Godwin is going to finish this season as a top 20 performer. He can be had for half of that cost right now. Go make a move before you can't. All right, so before I get into my sells, like the video, subscribe to the channel, greatly appreciated. Also check out my shorts. I do about 10 every single week. New content, 2 p.m. every single day outside of Sundays because football. Let's get into my sells for week 3. My first guy I am trying to get rid of at a high point is James Conner. Look, the Arizona Cardinals are tanking. They are not even trying to hide it very well. Even against the Giants, when a few players did not get the memo that they were supposed to be tanking, they still found a way to lose in historic fashion. So I know that it is hard to sell a healthy running back right now, especially one that has workhorse usage and a role in the passing game. However, that matters not, because I want as few pieces of this Cardinals offense as I can possibly have, and Conner just gave us an out with his big week 2. 26 carries, 106 yards, good enough for 4.6 yards per carry, and a touchdown that catapulted him to the RB 13 on the season. He has been a top 24 running back in each of his first 2 games, and he also caught 5 balls, albeit for 8 yards total, back in week 1. Now, Conner will probably get big time usage most of the season, and that is all that I got for him. Full disclosure, I love Conner as the person, but I am down on him as the player, and I was coming into the season as well, mostly because of the dumpster fire surrounding him. The time to sell him is now for so many reasons. First, the Cardinals will not get to face the New York Giants every single week, and that is very important. So I believe that the games that they play with both solid usage and good efficiency from Conner are going to be few and far between by the time we get to the end of the year. Arizona is also not going to be leading most games, and while game script does not kill Conner entirely, it is still going to be against him more often than not. We know Arizona's offensive line is terrible, probably bottom 5 in the league, so that doesn't help. And they also get the league's #1 defense next week in Dallas before they get a week 4 matchup with the San Francisco 49ers. So if I set Connor's bar 75 yards rushing for the next 2 weeks, would you take the over or under? Something to think about. Week 5 is not getting easier for him. He's got an underrated Cincy squad there, and that means that Connor could be staring at running back obscurity in less than a month. I, for one, am not willing to sit on a current top 15 running back with that type of risk staring me down. And considering that I have not even mentioned the long injury history for Connor yet, the next move is clear. If you can pull an underperformer like Joe Mixon, who is currently running back 22, or Travis Etienne, however unlikely, who is currently running back 20, that would be as good as it gets. My next sell, someone that I liked a ton coming into the year, and then tragedy struck. It is Garrett Wilson. This one is easy and it is obvious, but that does not make it wrong. Like most people, I saw massive upside with competent quarterback play after toiling through the trash for much of 2022. Everything was in front of him for a monster year. It may be 2023, but it sure doesn't feel like it for the New York Jets. Aaron went down, everything went black, and all potency in this offense that we thought might exist is now gone. Zach Wilson, spoiler alert, is bad. Like, very, very bad. He's not getting any better, and either is this Jets offense. It is not going to look like it did last week against Dallas. That defense is on another level, and I get that, but it is never going to look excellent. It is never going to be efficient with Zach Wilson at the helm, and for whatever reason, Robert Saleh does not seem interested in moving on and finding a better option, and I am not going to sit and wait around for him to make the right decision, the one that's obvious to everybody else. Garrett Wilson's numbers are not overly impressive right now. 7 catches, 117 yards. He's averaging under 60 yards per game, but he does have 2 touchdowns, and that is what we sell him on. Now, when we remember that those touchdowns include a 68-yard, I would say fluke more or less, slant, where there's about 60 yards after the catch, that was all Wilson. And then the other touchdown was the one-hand juggle miracle on Monday night against the Bills. So those are his 2 touchdowns. That's about, 75% of his yardage as well. That is not something that is sustainable, so I have to move on him now before we lose an opportunity. We aren't going to get what we gave up when we drafted Wilson, but if we can sniff anything close to the value that we invested, it is time to pull the trigger because my confidence in him moving forward is anything but high. Wilson is the current wide receiver 16. He's got touchdowns in both games, and he's got the hype and the name value that should carry over for at least a couple more weeks from what we had in draft season. So maybe we get a guy like Chris Olave, he's wide receiver 18, or T. Higgins at wide receiver 22. Honestly, I would settle for even DK Metcalf at wide receiver 29, or Calvin Ridley at wide receiver 25. All of these guys hopefully are on the table, and if not, take the best one that you can possibly get. I do not see Wilson finishing higher than a wide receiver 2, and he is going to be very volatile. You're never going to know when he is going to hit, and I am not interested in just plugging in my lineup and taking those goose weeks. My last sell for week number 3 is Miami Dolphin Raheem Mostert, and that is simply because his current production is not sustainable. Thus far, he's been the 3rd luckiest running back in 2023. He's earned a whopping 70% more points than expected based on the role. Now, the usage for him has been great. I'm not going to lie about that. 73% snap share, 60% rush share, all while running 65% of the routes. These are legit RB1 numbers. However, week 2, the numbers were bloated because of an injury to Solomon Ahmed. It basically forced Mostert into a must-play every snap type of a role. That is not going to happen every week. Problem number 2, rookie Devon A-Chain. He was banged up to start the year, and Jeff Wilson is also expected to return from the PUP list after week 4. Wilson's return is troubling because last year he was actually the main red zone back for the Finns, and he played more snaps than Mostert as well. If A-Chain continues to emerge, that just takes another slice out of the pie for Mostert, and I believe that will happen because of his versatility. We also cannot ignore the fact that Mostert is 31 years old. He has an extensive injury history as well. He's missed 24 games over the last 3 years. I'll also quickly remind you, if you owned any Dolphins running backs last year, it was an absolute nightmare to be an owner in this backfield. So why are we all of a sudden pretending like that is not going to happen again and everything is fine? There is a three-headed monster here. Mostert is old. A-Chain fits the offense perfectly. There are plenty of reasons to move on, so get out while you can profit. If anyone is a believer in Mostert, it is time to sell. He is the current RB5, so I'm trying to get someone like James Cook at RB12 or Ramondre Stevenson at RB15 if possible. Now, I know that's probably not likely a trade you're going to be able to pull off. But if we look even further down, there are still some buy low options. I'm thinking Jahmyr Gibbs at RB30 or even Breece Hall at RB29. There is a world where Mostert is bench fodder in just a couple of weeks. So I would be moving him for as much value as I can possibly get before that happens. That's it. All I got for you. I hope it was enough. If not, come back next week. I have 6 more coming at you. Thank you guys for spending some time with me today. I hope that you can make some moves to improve your rosters. Drop any comments, any trade questions down below. I love the engagement. It's one of the main reasons that I make this content. Going back and forth with you guys is a blast, and I love to be able to help you out. Can't do that if there's nothing there for me. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, current subscribers. Let's keep pushing for 1,000 together. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abriel Opatz, and I'll see you next time.